Hidden beneath the surface of history lies a tale too extraordinary to ignore. A story of an empire so vast, so advanced, that its existence has been all but erased from our records. Tartaria. Once marked on ancient maps, its name has since faded into obscurity, dismissed as a mere cartographic curiosity. But what if this forgotten empire was not just a myth? What if it was the pinnacle of human achievement, its knowledge and power deliberately concealed by those who came after? For centuries, we have been taught a version of history that champions the rise of empires we know well. But what if the true story is different? What if, in the shadows of time, there existed a civilization whose wisdom far surpassed our own, whose technology harnessed the forces of nature in ways we can only dream of? What if their cities, towering and majestic, were filled with secrets hidden in plain sight? History, as we have come to know it, is written by the victors, shaped by those who control the narrative. But what if the real history, one of advanced civilizations, cataclysmic events, and hidden knowledge, was carefully wiped away, leaving only traces behind? What if Tartaria was not only real, but intentionally erased to make way for the world we know today? Today, we embark on a journey to peel back the layers of time and uncover the lost empire of Tartaria. We will question the very foundation of what we have been taught and search for the hidden truths buried beneath centuries of silence. I'm curious. Where are you tuning in from, and what time is it there? Feel free to share in the comments. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribing is the best way to stay connected. Get cozy. It's time to let your mind wander, whether you're winding down for sleep or simply enjoying the calm. It's truly great having you here. Let's dive in. The name Tartary appears again and again on maps drawn between the 13th and 19th centuries. An enigmatic, expansive region stretching from Central Asia to Siberia, and even into parts of North America. But what did these maps really tell us? Official history suggests that Tartary was nothing more than a vast wilderness, populated by nomadic tribes, the Mongols, Tatars, and Turkic peoples. Yet, this explanation is troublingly simplistic. In fact, it may be a deliberate misdirection, hiding the true story of Tartary's far more profound significance. Tartary was not simply a blank space on the map. The recurring presence of this name on the world's early cartographic records suggests that it was much more than a wild and unexplored frontier. It was, in fact, a civilization, an empire, some say, that once spanned the entire Eurasian landmass and beyond. But why is it that, today, we know so little about it? What if the vastness of Tartary was not an indication of unexplored wilderness, but the indication of a highly advanced civilization, one whose technological and cultural contributions were so far ahead of its time that they have been deliberately suppressed? Tartary, according to alternative historians, was not a primitive region, but the seat of a global empire that unified disparate peoples under one banner. This was not just a name for a region, but a reflection of a civilization with remarkable advances in architecture, energy systems, and even spiritual and scientific knowledge. According to some theories, Tartaria was the civilization that controlled the secrets of free energy, built structures that harnessed natural forces, and maintained a harmonious connection with the earth in ways modern societies can only dream of. But how did it fall into obscurity? And why have we, for so long, been led to believe it was little more than a footnote in history? To uncover the answers, we turn to the work of Anatoly Fomenko, a Russian mathematician and historian whose new chronology theory has shaken the foundations of modern historical understanding. Fomenko proposes that our entire chronology of history is wrong, that the records we have, the histories we've been taught, have been deliberately manipulated and compressed. According to Fomenko's research, much of the history we believe to be factual, including the rise and fall of empires and civilizations, is a mere construct, a fabricated timeline designed to erase the true history of humankind. His work argues that what we consider the Middle Ages did not exist as we have been taught, and much of what we consider ancient history was artificially inserted into a far more recent timeline. Within Fomenko's theory lies a striking possibility. Tartaria, according to his interpretation, existed far earlier than conventional historians believe, and its true history was deliberately hidden, manipulated by those who sought to control the world's narrative. The knowledge of Tartaria, the technologies it wielded, the systems it developed, and the society it built, was systematically erased from the historical record, its influence obscured to maintain the dominance of later empires. But Fomenko's theory is not the only one. Nikolai Lidashov, another Russian historian, suggests a different, but equally compelling interpretation of Tartaria. Levashov's research delves into the Slavic Aryan Vedas, ancient texts that describe the early Slavic peoples as the descendants of a great advanced race, one that ruled vast swaths of the earth and laid the groundwork for much of the world's forgotten knowledge. According to Levashov, Tartaria wasn't just a political empire. It was a spiritual and cultural force whose understanding of energy and nature was so advanced that it remains hidden from our modern world. He posits that Tartaria was the center of this ancient knowledge, a civilization that understood the flow of natural forces in ways that our modern world is only beginning to comprehend. If Tartaria was indeed a civilization of such advanced capabilities, what happened to it? Was it simply wiped away by time, or was there a far more deliberate, catastrophic event that led to its erasure from history? Alternative historians suggest that the collapse of Tartaria was not a natural occurrence, but rather the result of a massive global event, a reset that was engineered to erase the memory of this ancient civilization. What if the collapse of Tartaria was not just the fall of an empire, but a planned reset orchestrated by the ruling elites who survived the event? Some theories propose that this reset event occurred in the 18th or 19th centuries, wiping out the technological marvels and cultural achievements of Tartaria in one catastrophic sweep. The elites who survived this global catastrophe then moved to consolidate their power, erasing all traces of Tartarian civilization in order to secure their control over the future. The story of Tartaria, its technologies, and its profound understanding of the world was buried, not just by time, but by design. At the heart of these theories lies the idea that Tartaria was far more advanced than we've been taught. Some researchers point to the architecture left behind by the Tartarians as evidence of their superior knowledge. Star forts, cyclopean stone structures, and domed buildings that seem far too complex and well-designed for their purported time. These buildings were not simply architectural feats. They were energy systems, structures built to harness natural forces, channel energy, and sustain life. The idea that these structures were built using free energy systems, energy drawn from the atmosphere itself, suggests a level of technological sophistication that the mainstream narrative does not account for. And what about the people who built these extraordinary structures? Some alternative historians propose that the inhabitants of Tartaria were not ordinary humans, but giants, beings of extraordinary size and strength, capable of constructing these colossal edifices. These giants were not the stuff of myth, but a race of people who, according to this view, were taller and more robust than modern humans, their physical stature allowing them to build the monumental structures that we see as evidence of Tartaria's greatness. Yet, despite the obvious anomalies in the historical record, these questions have been dismissed by mainstream historians. The idea of Tartaria as an advanced empire is often laughed off as pseudo-history. The mainstream narrative insists that the supposed remnants of Tartaria are nothing more than the products of later civilizations, or even the result of natural processes like erosion and decay. But the evidence is hard to ignore. The buildings, the architecture, and the strange anomalies in the historical record all point to a civilization far more advanced than we've been led to believe. Perhaps the most compelling evidence lies in the star forts that dot the landscape across Europe, the Americas, and even parts of Asia. These structures, which have been attributed to the 16th and 17th centuries, are not just military fortifications. They are energy devices. Built in geometric shapes, with precise alignments to the stars and the earth, these forts were likely designed to harness and channel natural energy. They were not just designed to protect, but to power. But why would this knowledge be hidden? The answer, many alternative historians suggest, lies in control. The elites who took power after the fall of Tartaria recognized that the knowledge of free energy, of advanced architectural techniques, and of natural forces that could be harnessed was far too dangerous. If the world at large knew of these technologies, they could never have maintained their control. So they erased the legacy of Tartaria, replaced it with false histories, and buried its technologies beneath the sands of time. The question, then, is not just about what happened to Tartaria, but about what it represents. It represents a civilization so advanced, so powerful, that its true history had to be buried in order for the world to move forward on a different path. Tartaria is not just a story of a forgotten empire. It is the story of human potential, a potential that was suppressed and erased in the name of power and control. Could the truth of Tartaria still be hidden beneath the surface? Could we one day uncover the full scope of its achievements? And if we do, what would that mean for the future of humanity? What if the key to understanding our own history and unlocking our future lies in the forgotten empire of Tartaria? In the quest to understand the lost empire of Tartaria, one event stands out as the most significant: the mud flood cataclysm. It is a theory that challenges the very foundations of conventional history, offering an explanation for the sudden and mysterious disappearance of this advanced civilization. According to proponents of the theory, a worldwide deluge of liquefied mud buried entire cities, submerging them under 10 to 20 feet of earth, in an event that occurred sometime between 1800 and 1850. This wasn't a localized flood, nor a simple disaster. This was a cataclysmic event on a global scale, a disruption that left civilizations in ruins and erased much of the advanced knowledge of the time. But how could such an event occur? Theories abound, ranging from natural phenomena to technological forces. Some suggest that the deluge was caused by massive geological shifts, triggered by a cataclysmic upheaval in the Earth's crust. Others point to celestial events, such as comets or meteor showers, that could have released massive amounts of water and debris, flooding entire continents. There are even those who propose the involvement of directed energy weapons, powerful technologies capable of shifting the Earth itself, releasing torrents of mud and sediment that buried entire cities in moments. The evidence, while sparse, is compelling. In cities such as Chicago, Seattle, and St. Petersburg, buildings with basement windows, buried far beneath the street level, suggest a violent upheaval, an event so powerful it altered the landscape in an instant. 19th century photographs show rapid urban excavations where entire buildings were unearthed from layers of dirt, and in some cases, entire city blocks were found to be built on top of buried structures. Inconsistencies in population records from the period further support the idea of a sudden, catastrophic event. Where did all the people go? Why did entire cities seem to vanish, only to be replaced by new inhabitants? The implications of the mud flood hypothesis extend far beyond an isolated geological event. According to this theory, the deluge was the pivotal moment that led to the destruction of the Tartarian Empire. The once great cities, with their advanced technologies and knowledge, were swallowed by the mud, leaving only remnants, ruins that would later be repurposed by the victors. Star forts, domed buildings, and other monumental structures were claimed by new powers, who sought to erase the history of the empire and rewrite it in their image. The grand buildings that once served as centers of power and knowledge were dismantled, their secrets buried beneath the layers of time. In the wake of this flood, the survivors of the catastrophe were forced to rebuild. But this wasn't a process of natural recovery. Instead, many proponents of the mud flood theory argue that the repopulation of the Earth was engineered. Some suggest that the new populations were not simply refugees from the flood, but orphans or even clones, beings engineered to replace the lost civilization. In a world that had suffered such a devastating blow, the question of who repopulated these cities and how they came to power is central to understanding the aftermath of the mud flood event. World's fairs, such as the 1893 Chicago Exposition, are cited as evidence of this new world order. These fairs were not just celebrations of modernity, but events designed to cover up the true history of the Earth and its previous inhabitants. By showcasing new technologies and advancing the narrative of progress, these fairs served as a smokescreen, a distraction from the dismantling of Tartarian technology. The impressive buildings constructed for these fairs were often built on the foundations of older, more advanced structures, erasing the remnants of the previous empire while establishing a new vision of the future. What was once the cutting edge of science and technology in the days of Tartaria became nothing more than a curiosity, a relic of a forgotten age. The anomalies that support the mud flood theory extend beyond the structures of the cities themselves. Consider the early photographs of empty cities, devoid of human life, yet full of buildings and infrastructure. These haunting images suggest that something catastrophic had occurred, something that led to the sudden abandonment of entire urban centers. Why were these cities empty, yet so well developed? Why did they appear fully formed, yet devoid of the people who had once inhabited them? Another supporting anomaly is the rapid construction timelines that characterized the rise of grand buildings in the 19th century. In just a few decades, some of the most impressive structures in the world, such as the grand cathedrals, palaces, and government buildings, were erected. But how could such grand feats of architecture be completed so quickly without the technological advancements of modern construction techniques? Could it be that these buildings were constructed using the remnants of Tartarian technology, or perhaps using knowledge passed down from the surviving elites of the great empire? Geological inconsistencies add yet another layer of intrigue to the mud flood hypothesis. In certain regions, the absence of tree rings before 1800 suggests that something profoundly disruptive occurred during this period. Trees, which have served as natural timekeepers for millennia, seem to show gaps in their growth cycles, a strange anomaly that suggests a global event capable of halting or altering the natural progression of time itself. What event could have caused this disruption? Was it the mud flood, a natural disaster of unprecedented scale, or something more insidious? As we look at these anomalies, we are forced to confront a chilling possibility. The collapse of Tartaria was not just the result of a natural disaster, but the result of a global reset. An event orchestrated to erase the knowledge, the technology, and the memory of a civilization that was too advanced, too powerful, to be allowed to continue. The mud flood event, whether caused by natural forces or technological means, left behind more than just ruins. It left behind the echoes of a lost empire, one whose true history may never be known. The mysteries of Tartaria extend far beyond what is visible in the ruins and remnants scattered across the landscape. While much of its history is obscured by time and manipulation, what we can examine in the structures that remain speaks volumes about the level of sophistication possessed by its people. From towering spires to domed buildings, and from cyclopean stonework to grand neoclassical structures, the architecture of Tartaria is a testament to an advanced civilization that seemed to understand and manipulate the very forces of nature in ways that modern societies are just beginning to fathom. But it's not just the scale of these structures that raises questions. It's their purpose, their design, and the technologies they might have housed. One of the most striking features of Tartarian architecture is the use of spires, domes, and antennas, structures that, on the surface, seem to be ornamental, but may have been far more functional than we understand today. The claim is that these buildings were designed not just for aesthetic appeal or structural integrity, but as atmospheric energy harvesters. Devices that tapped into the natural energy of the earth and the sky. These designs bear a remarkable similarity to the wireless power concepts pioneered by Nikola Tesla, a man who envisioned a world where energy was freely transmitted through the air, accessible to all, and entirely independent of fossil fuels. Tesla's ideas, revolutionary in their time, proposed that the Earth itself could be harnessed as a power source, with wireless transmission systems transmitting energy from one point to another without the need for wires or cables. Could the spires and domes found in the architecture of Tartaria have been a realization of Tesla's dream, built centuries earlier? Some theorists believe that the ancient civilization of Tartaria had already perfected the methods of wireless energy transmission, harnessing atmospheric electricity to power their cities, homes, and industries. In this society, energy was free and abundant. There was no need for the fossil fuel-driven systems that dominate modern society today. But after the so-called reset event that destroyed much of Tartaria, this free energy system vanished. The knowledge of how to harness the forces of nature was buried, and the remnants of Tartarian technology were either destroyed or hidden away. Post-reset, societies around the world were forced to turn to more conventional sources of energy: fossil fuels, coal, and later, electricity. Systems that could be controlled and monetized by the ruling elites. The idea of free energy, once accessible to everyone, was suppressed and replaced by a world dependent on the extraction and consumption of finite resources. If Tartaria's people had indeed discovered how to harness atmospheric energy, it would explain much of the advanced architecture that remains today. Buildings that appear to be designed with a purpose far beyond simple shelter. These structures could have served as conduits for the energy that powered the entire society, making fossil fuels unnecessary. The question then becomes, was this knowledge lost in the cataclysmic event that erased Tartaria from the record books, or was it deliberately hidden from us? Tartaria's legacy is etched into the stones of its monumental structures. The architectural evidence that remains is so intricate and imposing that it challenges the notion of its supposed primitive past. One of the most striking features of Tartarian architecture is the Cyclopean stonework. Massive blocks of stone so perfectly cut and fitted that modern engineering would struggle to replicate them, even with today's technology. These structures, including star forts and domed buildings, are unlike anything seen in the buildings of the 19th century, despite being attributed to that period. Why would such advanced designs appear in the 1800s, when the supposed builders had only just emerged from what we are told was the Industrial Revolution? The star forts, in particular, are a fascinating anomaly. These fortifications, built in geometric star patterns, are often seen as military defenses. However, there is a growing belief that they may have served a dual purpose, acting as both defensive structures and energy devices. Some theorists propose that the angular designs of these forts were not just meant to deflect enemy fire, but to channel and direct energy, possibly even harnessing the Earth's electromagnetic field or atmospheric electricity. The very structure of these forts, with their carefully planned geometry and use of certain materials, suggests that they were built with an understanding of energy systems far beyond what is commonly known. Moreover, these buildings were not designed by just any people. Some researchers propose that the builders of Tartaria were not ordinary humans, but were, in fact, giants. Humanoids ranging from 10 to 20 feet tall. The theory suggests that this race of giants possessed physical attributes that allowed them to construct buildings of colossal scale and precision. The massive proportions of these structures, doorways, columns, and even entire buildings, seem to align with this theory. Could these ancient giants have been responsible for the construction of these monumental works, using technology and materials that were far more advanced than anything we have today? This brings us to the iconic neoclassical structures often attributed to the 19th century, such as the U.S. Capitol and the Eiffel Tower. These buildings, with their grand columns, domes, and intricate facades, appear to be extensions of Tartarian architectural principles. Could these be the works of a society that was already in decline, repurposed by later generations to conceal the true origins of their design? Or were they built by the victors of the Reset event, who repurposed Tartarian knowledge to create new symbols of power while hiding the true nature of the architecture beneath? One of the most profound aspects of the Tartarian narrative is its connection to biblical and mythical eras. According to some interpretations, Tartaria was not merely an earthly empire, but the literal embodiment of the millennial kingdom, a period of peace, prosperity, and spiritual harmony that is mentioned in the Bible as the reign of Christ on earth. Some suggest that Tartaria was the golden age after the great flood described in the story of Noah. This period, lasting 1,000 years, saw humanity at its peak, living in harmony with nature, powered by free energy, and guided by wisdom and spiritual enlightenment. The idea that Tartaria could be the millennial kingdom has its roots in ancient texts, where the concept of a golden age was not just a myth, but a memory of a time when humanity was in tune with the divine. If we accept this interpretation, it means that the destruction of Tartaria and the subsequent Reset event was not just a loss of a civilization, but the collapse of a utopian order that had ruled for centuries. The flood, whether literal or metaphorical, represented the end of this golden age, the wiping away of a society that had transcended the need for conventional energy sources, and the beginning of a new fragmented world order. The reset that followed did more than erase the empire. It also erased the memory of its spiritual and technological wisdom. The knowledge of the free energy systems, the advanced architecture, and the harmonious society was buried under layers of history and replaced by a new narrative, one in which humanity was forced to rely on finite resources, ruled by a select few who controlled the flow of information and power. This connection between Tartaria and the millennial kingdom has profound implications for our understanding of history. What if the fall of Tartaria wasn't just the fall of an empire, but the loss of a spiritual and technological era that could have radically altered the course of human development? What if the knowledge suppressed by the Reset event could have empowered humanity to live in a world without conflict, without scarcity, and without the need for the systems of control that dominate modern society? The echoes of Tartaria's advanced civilization, its free energy, and its spiritual wisdom still linger in the architectural wonders that remain. These remnants, star forts, Cyclopean stonework, and neoclassical structures, are more than just buildings. They are symbols of a lost era, a reminder of what humanity was capable of when it was aligned with the forces of nature and the divine. But as we look at these remnants, we are left with one haunting question. What if the true history of humanity and its potential was hidden in the ruins of Tartaria all along? Tartaria, a name that conjures visions of vast, unexplored lands, once captured the imagination of early cartographers. However, as we step away from the conventional history that has been taught for centuries, we begin to see the empire of Tartaria not as an anomaly, but as the centerpiece of a vast and often hidden history that has been deliberately obscured. While some historians believe the story of Tartaria ends with its collapse, others see it as the beginning of a far more complex narrative, one that spans timelines, civilizations, and even questions the very foundation of modern history. This is not just the story of a lost civilization. It is the story of a forgotten war, a suppressed knowledge, and the deliberate rewriting of the past. As we dive deeper into the various interpretations of Tartaria, we must explore how its historical narrative has been fragmented into pieces, each version presenting new insights, some speculative, others rooted in empirical data. But the common thread among all these theories is the questioning of history itself. Why has Tartaria remained so obscure, and why has its true story been buried under layers of manipulated history? The concept of a manipulated history is powerfully embodied in the work of Anatoly Fomenko, a Russian mathematician whose new chronology theory posits a radical rewriting of our historical timeline. Fomenko's theory is not a mere footnote in historical revisionism. It is a seismic shift in the way we understand time and civilization. His work challenges not just the conventional narrative of Tartaria, but the entire structure of historical chronology. Fomenko argues that the history we know today has been artificially compressed, and that large chunks of time, particularly the medieval period, have been fabricated. He suggests that what we consider the Middle Ages is largely a construct. Fabricated centuries inserted into the timeline for the purpose of controlling historical narrative. In his view, the events attributed to the Mongol Empire, the Huns, and other empires were simply variations of the same event, repeated and duplicated across different historical periods to create a false narrative of ancient civilizations. For Fomenko, Tartaria was not just an isolated empire. It was, in fact, part of a broader, interconnected world empire that existed far earlier than traditional history suggests. The civilization we know as the Mongols, he argues, was actually an extension of Tartaria's expansive reach, misrepresented in historical records. In Fomenko's view, Tartaria was not confined to the steppes of Asia, but was a global empire whose records were systematically manipulated, replaced, or destroyed to mask its true power. The mathematical analysis behind Fomenko's theory, which involves the correlation of astronomical events, eclipses, and historical dynasties, reveals a disturbing pattern. The historical timeline we have been taught is a creation, a set of events arranged to fit an imposed narrative, with entire periods erased or misrepresented. By reconstructing the chronological structure of ancient events using celestial patterns, Fomenko shows how Tartaria's true timeline was deliberately obscured, erasing not just the empire's power, but the technologies and knowledge it possessed. His argument is clear. The rise of the Mongols, the appearance of the Huns, and other supposed empires were mere mirrors of Tartaria's lost history, duplicated over the centuries to hide the empire's true scope. Fomenko's work is profound, not only for its challenge to history, but also for the implications it carries. What if the history we have learned, the very fabric of our understanding of the past, has been designed not to inform, but to conceal? What if the truth about Tartaria, its power, its technology, its civilization, has been systematically erased by a deliberate process of historical manipulation? Among the more extraordinary theories surrounding Tartaria is the notion that the empire's rise and eventual fall was not merely the product of human civilization, but the result of extraterrestrial involvement. This view, though speculative, has captured the imaginations of those who believe that the advancements of Tartaria, its unparalleled architecture, its mastery of energy, and its rapid development, could not have been achieved by humans alone. Could it be that the empire of Tartaria was the product of alien influence, or perhaps even the descendants of extraterrestrial beings? The idea that Tartaria was in contact with extraterrestrial forces suggests a civilization far more advanced than the one we have been taught about. Some theorists propose that the technology of Tartaria, particularly its mastery over free energy and its complex, geometrically precise structures, was a gift, or an inheritance, passed down from beings far outside the realm of our understanding. This advanced technology, harnessed through atmospheric electricity and the manipulation of natural forces, could not have been developed by humans alone, but instead may have been shared with Tartaria by an alien race. The connection between Tartaria and extraterrestrials is not just confined to technological advancements. It extends into the very nature of the empire's collapse. Some proponents of this theory suggest that the so-called mud flood was not a natural disaster, but the aftermath of an extraterrestrial war. According to this view, Tartaria's downfall came not from the forces of nature, but from a targeted attack, possibly a direct conflict between the Tartarians and extraterrestrial forces that sought to destroy their power. The mud flood itself, then, would be the result of advanced weapons capable of creating massive geological shifts, burying entire cities, and erasing an entire civilization's existence in a matter of moments. While this theory ventures into speculative territory, it raises important questions about the origin of Tartaria's advanced technologies. If the civilization was truly capable of harnessing free energy and building monumental structures, could it have been influenced by a higher external intelligence? Or were the Tartarians themselves a product of an ancient race of beings, much like the mythological giants that some believe were responsible for building the great structures we now marvel at? The notion of a global reset event, a cataclysmic event that wiped out Tartaria and much of humanity's advanced history, is one that ties together many of the various theories surrounding the Empire's disappearance. Whether caused by natural forces, extraterrestrial weaponry, or deliberate manipulation by elites, this event is seen as the critical turning point that erased Tartaria from the historical record and ushered in the modern world we know today. Central to this theory is the idea that powerful secret societies, such as the Jesuits, Freemasons, and Illuminati, were behind the erasure of Tartaria. These groups, often seen as the gatekeepers of knowledge and power, may have played a pivotal role in concealing the truth of Tartaria's existence. The idea is that, following the reset, the surviving elites, those who had weathered the catastrophe, deliberately suppressed the knowledge of the Empire's advanced technology and society in order to consolidate their own power. The erasure of Tartaria, according to this theory, was not just a matter of burying buildings and temples, but a concerted effort to rewrite history. The elites who came to power after the reset sought to build a new world order, one where the knowledge of free energy, advanced architecture, and global unity was replaced by a narrative of scarcity, control, and division. The creation of modern nations, the establishment of corporate powers, and the rise of fossil fuels were all, some argue, part of a calculated strategy to enforce dependency on systems controlled by the elites. This theory also ties in with modern conspiracy theories, such as those espoused by figures like Graham Hancock, who argue that ancient civilizations, perhaps like Tartaria, were destroyed in a global cataclysm. According to Hancock and others, the knowledge of ancient civilizations has been deliberately erased, not by time, but by the very elites who control the narrative of history. The idea of a global reset is not just a theory. It is a potential explanation for why we have lost so much of our true history and why certain knowledge has been suppressed to ensure that we never truly understand the extent of what came before. As we explore the variations within the Tartaria narrative, one theme emerges: the control of knowledge. Whether through Fomenko's theory of manipulated history, the possibility of extraterrestrial involvement, or the narrative of a global reset orchestrated by powerful elites, the story of Tartaria is about more than just a lost empire. It's about the deliberate shaping of history to control the flow of knowledge and power. Tartaria was not just erased by the sands of time. It was buried by those who sought to suppress its truths and consolidate their control over the world. The evidence that remains, whether in the form of strange anomalies in architecture, advanced technologies, or the ruins of lost cities, suggests that what we have been taught is not the whole story. The question is no longer about whether Tartaria existed, but why it was hidden. And as we continue to dig into the layers of history, we must ask, what other secrets are still buried, waiting to be uncovered? The tale of Tartaria is not an isolated story, confined solely to the dusty pages of historical revisionism. It is intrinsically linked to a broader, deeper narrative, one that intertwines with other alternative theories of lost civilizations, hidden knowledge, and the manipulation of history. Tartaria's mysteries do not exist in a vacuum. They are woven into a fabric of ancient myths, controversial hypotheses, and radical reinterpretations of the world itself. In this chapter, we will explore the myriad ways in which the story of Tartaria connects to other alternative theories, ranging from the legendary Atlantis and Lemuria to the speculative realms of Hollow Earth and Flat Earth, and even the fabrications in our own historical timeline. These theories challenge the foundations of conventional history and offer an entirely new lens through which we can view the world and its forgotten past. One of the most fascinating connections in the Tartarian narrative is its potential relationship with the lost civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria, two ancient empires whose very existence is often disputed by mainstream historians. According to alternative history proponents, Tartaria is not just another civilization to be forgotten, but is actually a remnant or successor to the legendary civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria, both of which are said to have been lost to time in great cataclysmic events. The connection between Tartaria and Atlantis is especially compelling. Plato's account of Atlantis, described as a vast island civilization that existed thousands of years before his time, has intrigued scholars and theorists for centuries. According to Plato, Atlantis was a highly advanced civilization, possessing technology and wisdom far beyond that of his contemporaries. Yet, in a single day and night, the island of Atlantis sank into the sea, an event that has been described as one of the greatest catastrophes in human history. The theory that Tartaria may be a successor or remnant of Atlantis stems from the idea that both civilizations shared many common traits: advanced technology, sophisticated energy systems, and a society that, according to some, may have been powered by free energy. The mud flood hypothesis plays into this connection, suggesting that the cataclysmic events that destroyed Tartaria were akin to the sinking of Atlantis. Some theorists argue that the mud flood, a global deluge of liquefied earth that buried entire cities, mirrors the flood that destroyed Atlantis. In both cases, a sudden and violent disaster wiped away an advanced civilization, leaving behind nothing but the faintest traces of its grandeur. According to this view, the flood that buried Tartaria could have been a second great catastrophe, one that followed in the wake of the original disaster that sank Atlantis. Both Atlantis and Tartaria were believed to have mastered advanced energy systems, whether free energy, atmospheric electricity, or technologies far beyond our current understanding. The presence of massive stone structures, including the star forts and domed buildings found in Tartaria, suggests that the empire may have inherited or even perfected these energy systems long before modern science was capable of grasping such concepts. And much like Atlantis, the knowledge of these systems and the architecture that supported them was lost following the cataclysmic flood. Additionally, both Atlantis and Lemuria are frequently linked with the concept of giants, a race of beings who were supposedly far taller and more powerful than the humans we are familiar with today. In the case of Tartaria, some theories suggest that the empire was constructed by giants, who left behind massive, precisely crafted stonework that appears beyond the capability of regular-sized humans to build. This association ties Tartaria's legacy to the myth of giants, which is commonly associated with the lost civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria. In this way, the connection between Tartaria and the mythical civilizations of Atlantis and Lemuria becomes a compelling and coherent theory, one that unites the ideas of advanced technology, catastrophic destruction, and the erasure of ancient knowledge. Beyond the connections to ancient lost civilizations, the story of Tartaria also intertwines with some of the most controversial and speculative theories of the modern world, the flat Earth and hollow Earth hypotheses. While these theories are often ridiculed by mainstream science, they have a dedicated following and offer alternative views of our planet that challenge conventional understanding. Some proponents of the flat Earth theory suggest that Tartaria's true extent may have reached far beyond what we consider the known world, extending into realms that have been hidden from public view. According to this view, Tartaria was part of a much larger world, one that stretched beyond the ice walls to hidden continents and forgotten realms. In this alternative view of the Earth, the known continents are only a fraction of what was once inhabited by civilizations like Tartaria. The Great Wall of Ice, which some claim exists at the edge of the Earth, could have been a natural barrier protecting Tartaria from the outside world and its ultimate destruction. The theory of the hollow Earth ties into this as well. Some suggest that the civilization of Tartaria could have been connected to realms inside the Earth, with the survivors of the global cataclysm retreating to the Earth's interior to rebuild. This theory posits that Earth is hollow, with a habitable inner world that has been hidden for millennia. Tartaria's advanced knowledge of energy systems and its ability to harness free energy could be linked to this hidden world, which some believe could be accessed through natural openings at the poles or other undiscovered entrances. The mud flood event that allegedly destroyed Tartaria might have been an effort to bury access points to these hidden realms, ensuring that the knowledge of inner Earth civilizations and their advanced technologies remained sealed. The connections between Tartaria, hidden continents, and the hollow Earth theory create a web of speculation that continues to intrigue those who question the accepted history of our world. At the heart of the debate over Tartaria lies the concept of time itself. The phantom time hypothesis, proposed by German historian Herbert Illig, suggests that a significant portion of the Middle Ages, the period from approximately 614 to 911 A, was entirely fabricated. According to Illig, historical records from this time were altered or erased, creating a phantom period that never truly existed. This hypothesis is central to understanding Tartaria, as it suggests that much of the timeline we believe to be true is not accurate, and key events in history have been artificially manipulated. Fomenko's new chronology aligns closely with the phantom time hypothesis, adding that not only were the Middle Ages fabricated, but entire centuries are compressed into the timeline to obscure the true events of history. Fomenko and Illig both suggest that Tartaria's true timeline was deliberately obscured. Instead of seeing it as a civilization lost to time, it was intentionally erased from historical records, hidden within a timeline that was carefully reconstructed to fit a narrative controlled by the elites of the time. By shifting and compressing time, those in power were able to consolidate their authority and erase any evidence of Tartaria's existence. This created a distorted understanding of the past with the grand empire of Tartaria. Once a global superpower was relegated to myth, and its technology, knowledge, and achievements were erased. The phantom time hypothesis suggests that this manipulation was not a simple oversight, but a coordinated effort by those in control of historical records, designed to ensure that the true history of Tartaria and other lost civilizations would never be revealed. The origins of the Tartarians have long been a subject of intrigue. One of the more widely discussed theories links the Tartarians to the ancient Scythians or Hyperboreans, two groups that occupy a mythic place in the history of Eurasian cultures. The Scythians were an ancient nomadic people who roamed the steppes of Central Asia, while the Hyperboreans are described in Greek mythology as a race of people who lived beyond the north wind in a land of eternal spring. Some alternative historians suggest that the Tartarians were the descendants of these ancient groups, with their culture and technologies passed down through the generations. The Hyperboreans, in particular, are often cited as the progenitors of the advanced civilizations of the North, and many alternative historians argue that the Tartarians were the inheritors of their knowledge. These groups, it is believed, possessed knowledge of free energy, advanced astronomy, and sophisticated architectural techniques that were far ahead of their time. In this view, the Tartarians were not just isolated in the wilderness, but were part of a much broader cultural and technological legacy. Their empire, built on the foundations of ancient knowledge, extended across continents, uniting the peoples of the East and West under one banner. However, this legacy was buried, obscured by the rewriting of history, and the connections between the Tartarians and their ancient ancestors, the Scythians and Hyperboreans, were lost to time. This theory is tied to ideas of Aryan or Slavic supremacy, which are problematic from a modern perspective, but are central to some of the early 20th century narratives around Tartaria. It is crucial to approach these connections critically, but they nevertheless underscore the idea that Tartaria was far more than just a footnote in history. It was the final chapter of a much older, far-reaching civilization, one whose roots extended back to the ancient past, and whose legacy was systematically erased by forces seeking to control the narrative of history. As we navigate through the various alternative theories surrounding Tartaria, it becomes clear that the narrative of this lost empire is more than just a curiosity. It's a key to understanding a hidden chapter of human history, whether through connections to Atlantis, ties to the Hollow Earth, the manipulation of time, or the ancient Scythians and Hyperboreans. The story of Tartaria weaves together a complex tapestry of forgotten civilizations, lost knowledge, and the deliberate erasure of humanity's most advanced epochs. Each theory, whether rooted in astronomical data, speculative ideas, or historical anomalies, offers a unique lens through which to view Tartaria's lost history. Yet the common thread among all of these narratives is the belief that Tartaria was not a simple empire, but a profound force in human history. One that, if rediscovered, could change our understanding of the past and perhaps offer insights into the future. As we continue to dig into the depths of these theories, we are left with a tantalizing question. How much of our past has been concealed, rewritten, or buried under layers of history? And how much of it will we dare to uncover? As with any controversial and alternative theory, the narrative surrounding Tartaria has been met with its fair share of skepticism and critique. While its proponents passionately argue for the existence of a lost civilization, others dismiss these claims as pseudo-history, rife with misinformation and misinterpretations. These criticisms come from various quarters: historians, scientists, and social commentators, each questioning not only the validity of the evidence, but also the broader implications of believing in such radical theories. However, it is precisely these critiques that invite us to explore deeper, examine the evidence more carefully, and understand the broader consequences of these alternative ideas. While the mainstream view dismisses Tartaria as a mere myth, its detractors are not just questioning a lost empire. They are challenging the very foundation of how we perceive history and knowledge itself. One of the most frequent criticisms leveled against the Tartaria theory is its association with pseudo-history. The very idea that an entire civilization could be erased from history, with such compelling evidence to support it, invites accusations of conspiracy theorism. Some critics argue that the theory is no different from other fringe beliefs, like those surrounding ancient aliens or the flat earth theory. According to these critics, the claims about Tartaria rest on weak evidence, selective readings of history, and at times, the manipulation of facts to fit a preordained narrative. A key point of contention is the way proponents of the Tartaria theory interpret historical maps. Critics assert that many of these maps, often cited as evidence of a vast, unified empire, were nothing more than cartographic placeholders. In the 13th through 19th centuries, European explorers and mapmakers labeled regions like Tartary to represent vast and largely unknown lands. These maps were not intended to denote the existence of a singular empire, but rather to indicate territories that had yet to be explored or understood. In this view, the presence of the word Tartary on maps is seen as little more than an artifact of early exploration, not a confirmation of an advanced civilization. The name was often applied to a vast region of Siberia, Central Asia, and parts of the Far East, which were perceived as mysterious and uncharted by Europeans at the time. The term Tartary became synonymous with areas of the world that were inhabited by various nomadic tribes, Mongols, Tatars, and Turkic peoples, who were not perceived by Europeans as having a sophisticated, centralized empire. Critics argue that to interpret these maps as proof of a grand unified civilization is to misread the context in which they were drawn. Moreover, the association of Tartaria with anti-Semitic or far-right ideologies has further fueled the skepticism around its narrative. Some fringe proponents of the theory have linked Tartaria to supremacist ideas, drawing dubious connections between ancient civilizations and modern nationalist movements. Critics claim that by romanticizing and idealizing a mythical civilization, proponents of the theory inadvertently reinforce harmful ideologies that seek to exploit historical narratives for contemporary political agendas. While these criticisms cannot be ignored, they also raise an important question. Where does the line between pseudo-history and legitimate historical inquiry lie? When does the questioning of mainstream history cross the line into conspiracy? Understanding this balance is crucial as we continue to explore the possibility that the story of Tartaria may be more complex than we've been led to believe. On the scientific front, there are several explanations that debunk the key elements of the Tartaria theory, particularly the idea of the mud flood event. Skeptics argue that the phenomenon of buried buildings, such as those with basement windows found at street level in cities like Chicago and St. Petersburg, is simply a result of local geological or architectural developments, rather than evidence of a global cataclysm. One commonly cited explanation is the practice of raising city streets during the 19th century. In cities like Chicago, rapid urbanization and industrial expansion led to the elevation of streets and buildings to accommodate rising water levels, flooding, or infrastructure improvements. The sunken buildings with basement windows at street level are not evidence of a mud flood, but rather the remnants of a city that underwent significant urban redevelopment, particularly during the height of the Industrial Revolution. Critics argue that these changes were driven by the practical needs of a growing metropolis, not the result of a world-shattering disaster. In terms of architecture, many of the grand buildings attributed to the Tartarians, such as the neoclassical buildings found in the U.S. Capitol or the Eiffel Tower, are explained by the Beaux-Arts style, a popular architectural movement in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These structures, with their grand columns, domes, and ornate facades, were a direct reflection of the design principles of the time, which sought to combine classical aesthetics with modern engineering. The idea that these buildings were remnants of a lost civilization is countered by the fact that the same styles were being employed by architects across Europe and North America during the late 1800s. Far from being evidence of Tartarian influence, these buildings are seen as symbols of a rapidly industrializing world that was, indeed, making great strides in architecture and engineering. A scientific debunking of the mud flood, the architectural styles, and the dating of these structures rests on the notion that our understanding of history is grounded in verifiable evidence. By analyzing the timelines of construction, the nature of urban development, and the cultural shifts of the time, many scholars assert that the rise of modern cities and grand architecture was not the result of a mysterious lost civilization, but rather the product of incremental progress during the Industrial Revolution. While the historical and scientific criticisms of the Tartaria theory are important, there is also a broader social impact to consider. The spread of alternative histories, particularly those that challenge the established narrative, has the potential to erode public trust in the very institutions that have shaped our understanding of the world: academia, science, and historical scholarship. The widespread speculation about Tartaria and other lost civilizations can be seen as part of a larger trend, one that undermines trust in authoritative sources of knowledge. In a world where conspiracy theories proliferate, especially on social media platforms, the desire to question everything often morphs into the dismissal of everything. This skepticism, while born from a genuine curiosity to understand the past, has led to an environment where the lines between fact and fiction, truth and misinformation become increasingly blurred. When people begin to question the established narratives of history without fully understanding the complexity of historical research, they risk falling into a trap of intellectual nihilism. A society that refuses to trust its experts, that discards decades or centuries of research, runs the risk of devaluing the processes that allow us to gain reliable knowledge about our world. History is not just a series of stories. It is a discipline rooted in evidence, critical thinking, and rigorous methodology. The dangers of ignoring this process are profound. If we dismiss established history without careful consideration, we risk replacing fact with speculation and evidence with opinion. Moreover, this trend of rewriting history, particularly through the lens of conspiracy theories, can have negative consequences for social cohesion. When historical narratives are rewritten to fit ideologies, whether political, religious, or otherwise, they risk distorting the truth in ways that harm social trust. This is especially true when the rewriting of history serves to legitimize far-right or supremacist ideologies. The case of Tartaria is a perfect example. Some theories surrounding Tartaria have been appropriated by groups that seek to bolster ideas of racial superiority, claiming that the ancient Aryans were the true rulers of the earth. Such narratives are not just dangerous because they distort history, but because they carry the potential to divide societies and justify harmful ideologies. At the same time, this skepticism towards established history can open the door for intellectual exploration. The questioning of official narratives is a vital part of human curiosity and growth. However, it is crucial that this exploration is conducted with care, guided by evidence and critical inquiry. The theory of Tartaria, though intriguing and rich with mystery, must be examined with the same intellectual rigor applied to any historical investigation. We must be cautious not to fall into the trap of narrative construction based on selective facts or misinterpreted evidence, but instead seek a balanced understanding that allows for curiosity and skepticism without undermining the academic processes that shape our understanding of the past. As we explore the many theories surrounding Tartaria, we are faced with a tension that is inherent in the study of alternative histories. On the one hand, these theories encourage us to question the established narrative, to consider the possibility that history may have been manipulated, and to seek deeper truths. On the other hand, they carry with them the risk of undermining our trust in objective knowledge and critical inquiry. The story of Tartaria, whether true or not, is a reminder of the complexity of history and the dangers of oversimplification. It challenges us to reconsider what we think we know and invites us to explore new ideas. But as we venture into the realm of the unknown, we must be careful not to discard the tools of historical research that allow us to separate fact from fiction. It is through careful, evidence-based exploration that we will uncover the true history of Tartaria, or any lost civilization. And it is only by embracing this rigorous approach that we can begin to fully understand the world that came before us. The story of Tartaria is not merely confined to oral traditions, speculative documentaries, or internet forums. It has found its way into a growing body of literature that attempts to shed light on its mysterious history. These books explore various facets of the lost civilization, from the sudden disappearance of its empire to the theories that suggest extraterrestrial involvement and technological suppression. Each work adds depth to the narrative of Tartaria, weaving together historical evidence, speculative thought, and the unrelenting search for the truth. Below, we examine some of the key works in this genre, each of which offers a unique perspective on the forgotten empire of Tartaria and the enigma of the Mud Flood. The Mud Flood Hypothesis. The History of the Conspiracy Theory about the Global Empire of Tartaria by Charles. River Editors 2022. One of the more comprehensive texts that examines the roots and cultural impact of the Mud Flood theory is the Mud Flood Hypothesis. The History of the Conspiracy Theory about the Global Empire of Tartaria by Charles River Editors. This book is a detailed look at how the Tartarian narrative has evolved from a fringe idea into a widely discussed theory in alternative history circles. It serves as a useful introduction to the Mud Flood Hypothesis, which suggests that a global catastrophe buried entire civilizations under layers of mud and debris, Tartaria being the most notable victim. Charles River editors trace the origins of the theory, starting with early explorers and cartographers who first recorded the existence of Tartary. The book then examines the rise of the mud flood theory, explaining how various alternative historians and theorists, including those with a background in pseudoscience, have linked the idea of a great flood to the erasure of a once thriving civilization. The author delves into the social and cultural impact of the theory, showing how it resonates with people's frustrations about the gaps in mainstream historical narratives. It explores how the mud flood theory gained traction through online communities, and how it became part of a larger discussion about historical suppression and conspiracy theories. The book also provides a critical examination of the evidence presented by proponents of the theory, carefully analyzing the claims of sunken cities, anomalous photographs of urban excavations, and discrepancies in population records. The author doesn't shy away from the criticisms levied against the mud flood hypothesis, offering a balanced perspective on how such theories can be both intriguing and problematic when they ignore established historical methods and scientific reasoning. This work is essential for understanding the origins, development, and controversies surrounding the idea that Tartaria was once a global empire wiped out by a catastrophic flood. Forgotten America, Tartaria, The Old World, and the Hidden Past by David Ewing, Jr., 2024. Forgotten America, Tartaria, The Old World, and the Hidden Past by David Ewing, Jr. is a striking contribution to the growing literature on the connection between North America and Tartaria. Ewing's book pushes the boundaries of the traditional narrative by exploring the possibility that ancient links between the Old World, specifically the lost empire of Tartaria, and the Americas may have been suppressed. He argues that what we now consider to be the New World was actually home to advanced civilizations long before Columbus arrived. Ewing delves into the catastrophic events that supposedly wiped out Tartaria, proposing that they may not have been isolated to Eurasia, but had worldwide consequences. The book goes beyond the usual focus on the mud flood theory to investigate how these global catastrophes might have been responsible for the suppression of advanced technologies, including free energy systems and architectural knowledge, which were later appropriated by the victors who rewrote history. The author's central claim is that the civilizations of North America were far more advanced than traditionally believed. By tying in the mud flood hypothesis, Ewing suggests that the flood-like events that buried Tartarian cities may also have affected the Americas, leaving behind mysterious ruins and structures that defy conventional explanations. The book goes on to explore the cultural and technological legacy of these civilizations, linking them to the mysterious structures found in places like the Grand Canyon and the many unsolved mysteries of ancient America. By doing so, Ewing argues that modern America, built on the remnants of these forgotten civilizations, has lost touch with its own true origins. One of the more provocative aspects of this book is Ewing's suggestion that the historical suppression of these ideas was part of a deliberate campaign by those in power to prevent the general public from learning about advanced, sustainable technologies. The hidden past of America, he contends, was buried in the aftermath of a global reset, which sought to reshape the modern world in a way that favored fossil fuels, centralized power, and industrialization. Forgotten America presents a compelling case for a much broader global history of civilization, one that was lost, erased, or intentionally hidden by the forces that emerged victorious from the resets of the past. David Ewing, Jr. expands on his exploration of Tartaria in Tartaria, Mud Flood, Book 1, a detailed work dedicated entirely to the mud flood theory and its role in the demise of the Tartarian Empire. This book takes a closer look at the specific evidence presented by proponents of the theory: sunken buildings with basement windows at street level, rapid urban excavations, and inconsistencies in population records from the 19th century. Ewing argues that these anomalies are not the result of simple architectural evolution, but rather the remnants of a society that was wiped out by a cataclysmic event. In Tartaria, Mud Flood, Ewing makes the case that the cities of Tartaria were deliberately buried by a Great Reset event, which not only altered the geographical landscape, but also erased the advanced technological systems that existed within the empire. The author draws on photographs and historical records that appear to show buildings buried beneath layers of earth, with evidence that suggests urban centers were rapidly constructed and then abandoned, often without explanation. The author also explores how these structures, particularly star forts and domed buildings, may have been energy-generating systems designed to power entire cities, making their sudden destruction even more suspicious. Ewing dives into the idea that the Mud Flood event was not just a random catastrophe, but rather part of a larger, orchestrated effort by the victors to bury the legacy of Tartaria and its free energy technologies. This book places significant emphasis on how the surviving elites rebuilt society after the reset, constructing new power structures and rewriting history to ensure that the technologies of Tartaria remained hidden from the public. Tartaria Mud Flood offers a deep exploration of the supposed evidence, challenging the mainstream historical narrative and questioning what we think we know about the rise and fall of civilizations. Heaven Bearers, A Great Reset of 1834 and the Mud Flood by Janine Helene. Year unknown. Heaven Bearers, The Great Reset of 1834 and the Mud Flood by Janine. Helene takes a more focused approach to the timeline of the reset event, specifically dating it to the year 1834. Helene suggests that this was the pivotal moment when the global powers undertook the Great Reset that obliterated Tartaria and buried its civilization under layers of mud and debris. In her view, the Mud Flood was not just a geological event, but the result of a deliberate effort to destroy an empire whose knowledge, technology, and societal structures were too powerful for the ruling elites to allow to persist. Helene draws upon a variety of historical sources ranging from obscure documents to early photographs to make her case that the reset event occurred in the early 19th century. She argues that this was not a random occurrence, but the culmination of a carefully orchestrated series of events meant to wipe the slate clean and allow for the rise of new powers that would dominate the world stage. According to Helene, the year 1834 marked the final phase of a century-long process of erasure, during which the remnants of Tartaria were destroyed and its advanced technologies concealed. In Heaven Bearers, Helene also explores the idea that the elites who survived a reset were responsible for not only erasing Tartaria from the historical record, but also for repopulating the world with a new, controlled population. The book discusses how the surviving powers used the World's Fairs and other major global events as tools to hide the knowledge of Tartaria and its technologies, showcasing a new world built on the ashes of the old. Helene's work is a provocative look at the global reset of 1834, making the case that what we consider the modern world was actually the result of a deliberate campaign to rewrite history and suppress the knowledge of a lost empire. The final book in this list, Tartaria, Mud Flood, Alien War by David Ewing, Jr., introduces an even more speculative and controversial angle on the story of Tartaria. Ewing incorporates the idea that Tartaria's destruction was not simply the result of a natural disaster or human conflict, but the outcome of an intergalactic war one fought between the Tartarians and extraterrestrial beings. This narrative suggests that the advanced technologies of Tartaria, including its free energy systems and harmonious architecture, made the civilization a target for extraterrestrial forces, leading to a conflict that ultimately resulted in the Mud Flood. The theory of alien involvement in the fall of Tartaria proposes that the Mud Flood event was not a random natural occurrence, but a targeted attack by alien forces. These extraterrestrials, described as advanced and technologically superior, may have seen the Tartarians as a threat to their own agenda and decided to wipe them out using devastating weaponry. The book draws upon ancient myths, modern UFO sightings, and anomalous events in history to suggest that the conflict between the Tartarians and aliens may have been a global event, one that led to the collapse of Tartaria and the scattering of its knowledge. Ewing's work weaves together the idea of a global reset, alien wars, and the suppression of knowledge, making a compelling case that Tartaria's disappearance was not the result of human negligence or natural disaster, but a battle fought on multiple fronts. This speculative angle offers a unique and thought-provoking view of Tartaria's legacy, blending elements of science fiction with historical speculation to create a narrative that challenges conventional understanding. The exploration of Tartaria and the mud flood theory is a complex and often speculative field, filled with a range of ideas, interpretations, and claims. For those new to the subject or those looking for structured introductions, primers and overviews play an essential role in understanding the foundations of the theories, the evidence, and the various claims made by proponents. In this section, we will delve into two important primers works that not only provide an entry point into the world of Tartaria, but also outline the controversies, anomalies, and questions that surround this alternative history. Tim Osman's Mudflood 101, a primer on mudflood theory 2019, is one of the first accessible works for anyone looking to understand the mudflood theory and its relationship to the mysterious and largely unexplored history of Tartaria. In this introductory guide, Osman breaks down the core principles of the theory, presenting a broad overview that touches on the key anomalies and questions that have emerged over the years. The book doesn't dive deep into any one aspect of the mud flood, but instead provides readers with a comprehensive framework for understanding the broader narrative. Osman begins with the premise that something unusual happened during the 18th and 19th centuries, an event so powerful that it left entire cities buried beneath layers of mud, buildings with sunken basements, and a mass erasure of history. From here, Osman walks readers through various geographical anomalies, including sunken windows, streets raised several feet above previous levels, and discrepancies in historical records. These examples are presented as evidence that a global catastrophe, referred to as the mud flood, took place, a disaster that buried the remains of an advanced civilization and led to the suppression of Tartaria's history. The book also touches on the various possible explanations for the mud flood, ranging from geological phenomena like shifting tectonic plates or volcanic activity to more speculative ideas, such as advanced weapons or extraterrestrial involvement. Osman does not firmly commit to any one theory, but rather encourage readers to explore the evidence and form their own conclusions. By presenting the anomalies in a clear and straightforward manner, Osman helps establish a framework for further inquiry, and for many, it serves as the entry point into the world of Tartaria, mud floods, and alternative histories. While the work is introductory, it's valuable for its ability to clarify the many complex elements of the theory and provide a solid foundation for understanding the broader context. It's also an important work because it encourages skepticism toward mainstream historical narratives, a key theme that underpins much of the alternative history surrounding Tartaria. In Mudflood 101, Osman makes an important contribution by making this fascinating, yet often difficult to digest theory accessible to the general public. Tartaria, the Mud Flood Chronicles. Mud Flood Tartaria, An Alternative History by Eitan, FISH, 2024. For those who want to delve deeper into the geological aspects of the mud flood theory and its connection to the mysterious lost empire of Tartaria, Tartaria, the Mud Flood Chronicles by Eitan Fish, 2024, is an essential text. Fish, who has made significant contributions to the alternative history field, tackles the mud flood phenomenon from a geological conspiracy perspective, focusing on the physical evidence and the scientific anomalies that challenge traditional history. In this book, Fish takes a more methodical and academic approach, building on the idea that the mud flood wasn't simply a regional event, but a global catastrophe that has been covered up by mainstream historical and scientific institutions. Fish's focus is on the geological evidence that might point to an event of seismic proportions, one that caused widespread mudslides, liquefaction, and rapid deposition of earth and debris, burying large swaths of civilization. Fish highlights the inconsistencies between the recorded history of these events and the physical evidence still found in the landscape today. Fish draws heavily from his own research, pointing to geological records, sediment layers, and the study of riverbeds and floodplains. He connects these anomalies with the sudden disappearance of advanced cities, explaining how the Earth itself could have been altered in a way that caused entire civilizations to be buried beneath meters of soil. He proposes that such events were not isolated, but occurred on a global scale, affecting Europe, Asia, and North America. The theory suggests that there was not just one, but several catastrophic events throughout history leading to what is described as a reset period during the 18th and 19th centuries. Unlike other works that focus primarily on the speculative aspects of Tartaria, Fish's book emphasizes scientific inquiry and a critical examination of geological records. He argues that the mainstream scientific community has been reluctant to consider these anomalies because acknowledging them would challenge the established historical narrative and the accepted understanding of geological events. The Mud Flood Chronicles doesn't just question the nature of the disaster itself, but also the implications of this catastrophe on human history. Fish suggests that the advanced technologies, including free energy systems and grand architectural feats attributed to Tartaria, were either destroyed or deliberately suppressed after the mud flood. The civilization of Tartaria, Fish argues, wasn't merely a collection of nomadic tribes as mainstream history suggests, but a globally connected empire whose knowledge and infrastructure were wiped out by this global event. This detailed, geologically grounded approach to the mud flood theory offers a compelling argument for those looking for hard evidence and scientific reasoning behind these ideas. While the above primers focus on the mud flood theory and its associated events, it is also crucial to examine works that delve deeper into the broader historical context of Tartaria. These texts lay the groundwork for understanding why the empire's history may have been erased, presenting alternative views of historical timelines and the manipulation of records. Anatoly Fomenko's History, Fiction or Science? 2003 to 2006 is one of the most radical and thought-provoking works in the field of alternative history. Fomenko, a mathematician and historian, is best known for his new chronology theory, which posits that much of the history we have been taught is a fabricated construction deliberately manipulated to obscure the truth of the past. Fomenko's work fundamentally challenges the traditional historical timeline. He argues that the events of the ancient world, including the rise and fall of empires, were not as linear as commonly believed. Instead, much of the history we attribute to ancient civilizations, such as the Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, was, according to Fomenko, fabricated, misdated, or duplicated. His new chronology seeks to compress the history of several centuries, arguing that many of the supposed ancient events are actually much more recent. One of the most important aspects of Fomenko's work is his treatment of Tartaria. According to Fomenko, the civilization of Tartaria was not a peripheral empire, but was actually central to the history of Europe and Asia. His theory suggests that much of the history attributed to other empires, like the Mongols and Huns, was in fact Tartarian history, misdated or duplicated in the historical records. Fomenko's research uses astronomical data, like eclipses, to track historical events and show that many historical timelines were altered. He also draws on mathematical models to demonstrate that certain historical events have been manipulated, leading to a distorted understanding of the past. Fomenko's work is important because it lays the foundation for many of the theories surrounding Tartaria. His assertion that history was artificially constructed to serve the interests of the ruling elites fits neatly with the idea that Tartaria's history was deliberately erased and replaced with a false narrative. His theory of new chronology opens the door for understanding the existence of civilizations like Tartaria, which were deliberately suppressed in favor of the timeline we now accept. The influence of Fomenko's work has been profound in the alternative history community. His challenge to the established historical narrative invites us to reconsider what we know about ancient civilizations, including the great empire of Tartaria. If Fomenko is correct, the true history of humanity, including the existence of Tartaria, has been distorted for centuries, and it is only by questioning the accepted timeline that we can begin to understand the empire's true role in shaping the ancient world. These works, whether they are primers or detailed historical analyses, offer more than just a window into the mysterious world of Tartaria. They provide a challenge to the conventional understanding of history, an invitation to question what we have been told, to reconsider the evidence, and to entertain the possibility that much of the history of humanity has been suppressed or distorted. While each book presents a different angle on the Tartarian, mystery from geological anomalies and mud flood theories to radical shifts in chronology, they all share a common thread: the belief that the true history of civilization and of Tartaria itself has been hidden. These texts encourage readers to explore beyond the established narrative, to seek the truth that lies beneath the layers of history, and to consider the possibility that the past is far more complex than we have been led to believe. In the search for Tartaria, we are not simply uncovering a forgotten empire. We are questioning the very nature of history, knowledge, and the forces that control the stories we tell ourselves about the past. The journey of rediscovery begins with these works that open the door to a world of possibility, speculation, and most importantly, critical inquiry. In the ever-growing conversation about Tartaria and the mud flood theory, the academic community has contributed a wide array of research papers, journals, and publications that explore, critique, and analyze the narratives put forth by alternative historians. These scholarly works provide both critical analysis and contrasting views on the various aspects of Tartaria, its supposed disappearance, and the influence of conspiracy theories in shaping our understanding of history. As we dive deeper into the academic discourse surrounding Tartaria, we uncover a wide range of perspectives, from rigorous historiographical critiques to pseudo-archaeological studies that examine the empire through speculative lenses. Here, we will explore key research papers and journals that have helped to define the ongoing debate over Tartaria's role in history. One of the most insightful critical analyses in the realm of Tartaria research is found in the paper Unveiling the Truth Behind Hidden Histories, published on ResearchGate in 2024. This paper tackles the rise of alternative histories, specifically the Tartaria conspiracy theory, and the impact such narratives have on our understanding of the past. The author argues that the growing popularity of mud flood theories and the claim of a lost global empire serve as a critique of traditional historiography. However, this critique is framed through a lens of skepticism about the motivations behind such theories. The paper discusses how these conspiratorial narratives can distort the public's understanding of history, leading to a dismissal of established academic standards. One of the central claims is that the resurgence of the Tartarian narrative is symptomatic of a larger distrust in authoritative knowledge, where the academic field of history is seen as controlled or manipulated to conceal truths that challenge mainstream ideologies. The analysis suggests that while alternative theories offer a platform for questioning established historical narratives, they can also lead to a destabilization of truth, where speculation and conjecture override factual evidence. By investigating the rise of these alternative histories, the paper ultimately cautions against the dangers of embracing conspiracy theories without evidence. The author also discusses the importance of distinguishing between genuine historical inquiry and speculative fiction that takes the place of evidence-based research. The piece is a valuable contribution to understanding the academic tension between mainstream history and the challenge posed by those who promote conspiratorial versions of history. Another academic work that critically examines the Tartaria theory is Alt History, a PDF publication from the University of Chicago that distinguishes historiographical analysis from conspiracy theory. This work delves into the methodologies used by alternative historians and critiques their approach to historical interpretation. The primary argument made in Alt History is that Tartaria, like many other conspiracy theories, relies on cherry-picked evidence, selective readings of historical sources, and a disregard for the academic methods of cross-referencing and verification. The paper's central premise is that historiography, the study of the writing of history, requires adherence to rigorous standards of evidence, and without these standards, historical narratives easily descend into conjecture and myth. Alt History tackles the question of what happens when historical scholarship becomes intertwined with conspiratorial thinking. The author argues that, while alternative histories may offer intriguing possibilities, they ultimately undermine the credibility of academic history by ignoring the broader context and, at times, by distorting facts to fit preconceived ideas. This paper specifically addresses the problematic aspects of mud flood theories and the widespread belief in the suppression of Tartaria's true history. It emphasizes how these theories, while rooted in genuine curiosity about the past, often lack the rigorous standards necessary for credible historical analysis. Ultimately, the paper concludes by urging readers to approach alternative histories with skepticism, advocating for an academic approach that prioritizes critical thinking, empirical evidence, and an understanding of historical context over sensationalist claims. Andrew Ward's The World That Was, an investigation of lost cities, hidden empires, 2024, is a thesis that explores the broader scope of pseudo-archaeology, with Tartaria being one of its focal points. Ward's research critically examines the myths surrounding lost civilizations like Tartaria, arguing that while these civilizations may have existed in some form, their portrayal in modern alternative histories is more speculative than factual. The thesis aims to bridge the gap between the allure of lost cities and the hard evidence needed to verify their existence. Ward looks at Tartaria through the lens of pseudo-archaeology, an approach that, while often lacking scientific rigor, nevertheless taps into the human desire to uncover forgotten histories. In his research, Ward critically evaluates how alternative historians have used evidence from the mud flood theory and the supposed remains of Tartarian cities to build a narrative that challenges the established understanding of ancient civilizations. He discusses how, in the absence of concrete archaeological evidence, these narratives rely heavily on interpretation and imagination. Ward's thesis is invaluable for anyone looking to understand the speculative nature of Tartaria research and the challenges of blending archaeological discovery with myth and legend. It provides a balanced perspective on the intersection of archaeology and the conspiracy theories that surround lost civilizations, including the role of Tartaria in this larger narrative. A key piece of evidence that has often been linked to the Tartaria narrative, though not directly connected, is the discovery of the Tartaria tablets in Romania. These ancient tablets, which date back to around 5300 BCE, have been the subject of much debate and are sometimes co-opted into the mythos of Tartaria by alternative historians. Georgi Lazarevici and his colleagues' 2016 paper Tartaria Tablets, the latest evidence in an archaeological thriller published on ResearchGate, provides a scientific examination of these tablets and their significance to the study of ancient writing systems. The paper examines the intricate symbols on the Tartaria tablets, which some researchers claim are the earliest form of writing in Europe. While these findings are important to the understanding of early human civilization, they are often drawn into discussions about Tartaria due to their mysterious nature and potential link to lost knowledge. Lazarevici's paper refutes some of the more fantastical claims about the tablets, focusing instead on the solid archaeological evidence and the context in which the tablets were found. The paper also addresses the broader implications of these findings, suggesting that while the Tartaria tablets are an important discovery, they do not support the narrative of a hidden empire like Tartaria. This paper provides a critical analysis of how ancient artifacts can be misused by alternative historians to support speculative theories. It warns against interpreting evidence without careful consideration of its cultural and historical context, emphasizing the importance of grounding interpretations in scientific methods rather than myth-making. The article Mysteries of Tartaria, Journey Through Fact, Speculation, and Meaning, published by Ultra Unlimited in 2023, offers a thought-provoking journey into the narrative of Tartaria and its place in the realm of alternative history. The piece explores how the theory of Tartaria and the Mud Flood event straddle the line between speculative fiction and legitimate historical inquiry. The article looks at the role of historical facts, how they have been manipulated, and the emergence of Tartaria as a focal point for those questioning the historical narrative. While the article acknowledges the allure of the Tartaria theory, its fascinating narrative, and the curiosity it stirs, it also critiques the methods by which this theory is spread. It discusses how many proponents rely on selective facts and conspiracy-driven reasoning to create a compelling story, while dismissing mainstream academic research that challenges their views. The piece examines the role of historical speculation in shaping alternative histories and highlights the dangers of falling into the trap of fact-free history, where speculation substitutes for verified evidence. The article blends fact and theory, addressing the role of Anatoly Fomenko's new chronology in advancing the Tartaria hypothesis. By presenting both sides of the debate, the article encourages readers to critically evaluate the evidence before accepting the alternative narrative of Tartaria. For those interested in understanding the role of cartography in the Tartaria debate, Tracking Tartary on Western Maps from the Library of Congress blog in 2025 offers a fascinating insight into how the term Tartary was used in European maps. The blog post provides a historical context for the word Tartary and explores how it was applied to vast regions of Central Asia, Siberia, and parts of North America from the 13th to the 19th centuries. The post focuses on how the term Tartary was not a reference to a singular empire, as some modern theorists suggest, but rather a cartographic term used to describe a geographical region known to Europeans, but not fully understood. It examines the evolution of the name Tartary in early maps and the various ways in which it was used to describe nomadic or uncharted territories. The blog debunks the idea that these maps prove the existence of a global Tartarian empire, emphasizing that these maps were more about European ignorance of distant lands than evidence of a lost civilization. This post is critical for understanding how cartography played a role in the development of the Tartaria myth, and highlights the importance of contextualizing historical evidence within the period it was created. By examining how Tartary was used in early maps, it becomes clear that these references were more a reflection of European exploration and mapping practices than evidence of an empire that spanned continents. Tartaria History is a Lie is a critique from an alternative historian that challenges the mainstream historical narrative regarding Tartaria. This PDF publication argues that the history of Tartaria has been deliberately hidden, with mainstream historians actively suppressing the truth about its existence. The pamphlet suggests that the suppression of Tartarian history is part of a larger conspiracy by powerful elites who control the flow of information. While this document pushes a highly speculative agenda, it provides a look into the alternative historiographical approach to Tartaria. The pamphlet attempts to use historical documents, photographs, and maps to present its case, arguing that the deliberate manipulation of historical facts has concealed the true story of Tartaria's rise and fall. Although the pamphlet is criticized by mainstream historians for its lack of academic rigor, it reflects the intense passion and conviction of those who believe in the suppressed history of Tartaria. The research papers, journals, and books that examine the Tartaria theory represent a multifaceted approach to understanding history, one that balances rigorous scholarship with speculative exploration. While some works present the theory as a pseudo-archaeological mystery, others challenge the mainstream narrative with a critical eye, urging readers to question what we know about the past. By engaging with these diverse academic perspectives, we are invited to rethink the boundaries of historical knowledge, acknowledging that the past may be far more complex and far more hidden than we've been led to believe.